Hello, English learners. Welcome back to English Podcast. I'm Saifi, and I'm so glad you're here. Today we're going to explore 100 daily advanced English phrases that will help you sound more fluent, more natural, and more confident in your conversations. These phrases are used by native speakers in all kinds of situations, whether they're chatting with friends, having a serious talk at work, or just expressing their feelings. So, if you want to take your English to the next level, this lesson is for you. As always, just relax, listen carefully, and practice speaking out loud with me when I give you examples. Let's get started. Let's imagine you're talking about something exciting, something that's going to happen soon. Instead of saying, "It will happen soon," you can say, "It's just around the corner." For example, "The weekend is just around the corner." It gives a positive feeling and builds excitement. Practice saying, "My vacation is just around the corner." Think about something exciting in your life and try the phrase with it. Now, if someone seems very calm and in control, especially during difficult moments, we often say, "She keeps her emotions in check." This phrase means someone does not let their feelings control them. For example, even when he was criticized, he kept his emotions in check. Try saying, "I try to keep my emotions in check during meetings." When someone is being ignored or treated coldly, the phrase, "get the cold shoulder," is a great way to describe it. For instance, after the argument, she gave him the cold shoulder. This expression is useful when describing awkward or distant social situations. Try this: "He tried to make peace, but I gave him the cold shoulder." Sometimes, people make quick decisions without thinking. We can say, "He jumped to conclusions." For example, "She saw a message and jumped to conclusions about it." It's helpful when talking about misunderstandings. Practice this. Let's not jump to conclusions until we know the facts. If someone never shows what they're really feeling, we say, "He has a poker face." That means their expression doesn't change even in emotional moments. For example, "She kept a poker face during the bad news." Practice with this line: "Even when I won the prize, I kept a poker face." When something is not very difficult or complicated, we say, "It's not rocket science." This means it's simple to understand. For instance, just follow the steps. It's not rocket science. Try saying, "Don't worry about the form, it's not rocket science." If something is extremely boring, you might say, "It's as dull as dishwater." For example, "That lecture was as dull as dishwater." Practice saying, "The movie last night was as dull as dishwater." Sometimes, we talk about something that's not decided yet. We can say, "It's up in the air." For example, "Our weekend plans are still up in the air." Try using this phrase: "The date for the meeting is still up in the air." When someone gets angry very easily, we say, "He has a short fuse." This means they lose their temper quickly. For example, "Be careful, he has a short fuse." Now practice with this example: "Don't upset her, she's got a short fuse today." If something is very easy to understand or obvious, we use the phrase, "It's a no-brainer." For example, choosing the cheaper option was a no-brainer. Say this with me. Getting an early night before the exam is a no-brainer. Sometimes, you want to tell someone not to worry. You can say, "Don't sweat it." It means, don't worry about it. For example, "I forgot to send the file." You can reply, "It's okay. Don't sweat it." Try this line, "I'll fix the mistake so don't sweat it." When someone is very nervous, we say, "He's on edge." For example, "She's been on edge all day, waiting for the results." Try this sentence, "He's on edge because of the job interview tomorrow." To describe someone who is very direct, or says exactly what they think, we say, "She doesn't mince her words." For example, when she's upset, she doesn't mince her words. Try this, "My boss didn't mince his words during the review." If something happens rarely, we say, "once in a blue moon." For instance, we go out for dinner once in a blue moon. Practice with this line, "I see my cousins once in a blue moon." If someone understands the situation completely, we say, "He's on the ball." For example, "She's always on the ball in meetings." Practice saying, "You need to be on the ball when managing a project." When you feel you've had enough of something, you can say, "I've had it up to here." It expresses frustration. For instance, "I've had it up to here with the noise." Try this, "I've had it up to here with his excuses." If something costs a lot of money, we say, "It costs an arm and a leg." For example, "That car costs an arm and a leg." Try this, "I want a new phone, but it costs an arm and a leg." When someone does something to make up for a mistake, we say, "He's trying to make amends." For example, after the argument, "She tried to make amends." Practice saying, "I sent flowers to make amends." To talk about someone who avoids responsibility, you can say, "He passed the buck." That means, he shifted the blame to someone else. For example, instead of solving the problem, she passed the buck. Try this, "Don't pass the buck" on your actions. If someone starts something with lots of energy, but loses motivation quickly, we say, "He's all talk and no action." For example, "He promised to help, but he's all talk and no action." Say this, "She's always talking about dieting, but she's all talk and no action." When something happens unexpectedly or suddenly, we say, "Out of the blue." For instance, "He called me out of the blue." Practice this, "Out of the blue, she announced she was moving." To describe a situation that's going badly or declining, we use, "It's going downhill." For example, after the manager left, things went downhill. Try this, "The service has gone downhill since last year." When you're talking about facing a very difficult situation, you can say, "He's between a rock and a hard place." For instance, "She's between a rock and a hard place. Both options are bad." Try this, "I'm between a rock and a hard place with this decision." If someone is very rich, we might say, "He's rolling in dough." It's an informal way to say someone has a lot of money. For example, after the deal, "He's rolling in dough." Practice this, "That actor must be rolling in dough." Let's keep going with more advanced phrases. When someone is feeling sick, especially with a cold or flu, we say, "He's feeling under the weather." For example, she's not coming to work, she's feeling under the weather. Try saying, I think I'll stay in bed, I'm feeling under the weather. When someone finally understands something after a delay, we say, the penny dropped. For example, I didn't get the joke at first, but then the penny dropped. Practice this. After rereading the text, the penny finally dropped. If someone doesn't want to make a decision or avoids giving a clear answer, we say, he's sitting on the fence. For example, she's sitting on the fence about whether to move or not. This phrase is especially useful when discussing indecision. Practice this one. I don't know which side he's on. He's sitting on the fence. When someone is very upset or crying a lot, we can say, she's in floods of tears. For example, she was in floods of tears after watching that movie. Try using this one. He was in floods of tears after losing his dog. If something happens without any preparation, we say, he did it off the cuff. That means it was spontaneous or unplanned. For instance, she gave a speech off the cuff. Practice saying, I answered the question off the cuff. When someone tells you something that you must keep secret, you can say, keep it under wraps. For example, we're planning a surprise party, so keep it under wraps. Try this. The new project is still under wraps. When something is very clear or obvious, we say, it's crystal clear. For example, the instructions were crystal clear. Try saying, she made her expectations crystal clear. If someone is being completely honest, we say, to be perfectly honest. For example, to be perfectly honest, I didn't like the movie. Try using this phrase, to be perfectly honest, I was nervous about the interview. When a situation is very tense or difficult, we use the phrase, walking on eggshells. For instance, after the argument, everyone was walking on eggshells around him. Practice this. We're walking on eggshells trying not to upset her. If you do something confidently and without hesitation, you can say, he took it in stride. That means he handled it calmly. For example, she took the criticism in stride. Try saying, he took the bad news in stride. To describe someone who is very focused and ready to act, we say, he's geared up. For instance, the team is geared up for the big game. Try this. I'm geared up for tomorrow's presentation. When something happens naturally without being forced, we say, it came naturally. For example, speaking in public came naturally to her. Practice this. For him, solving problems comes naturally. If someone is very serious about what they're doing, we say, she means business. For example, don't mess around, she means business. Try this. He walked in like he meant business. When you're not sure what will happen or what to expect, you can say, it's anyone's guess. For instance, it's anyone's guess who will win the game. Try this. With the weather, it's anyone's guess. If something is guaranteed or certain, we say, it's a sure thing. For example, with her experience, getting the job is a sure thing. Say this out loud, he's the best player, it's a sure thing he'll be chosen. When someone is behaving strangely or seems confused, we might say, he's out of sorts. For example, she's been out of sorts since yesterday. Try this. he didn't say much today, he's out of sorts. To describe something as unbelievable or shocking, we say, it blew my mind. For instance, the ending of the movie blew my mind. Practice this. The view from the top of the mountain blew my mind. If someone is extremely happy, we can say, she's on cloud 9. For example, after hearing the news she was on cloud 9, try saying, I was on cloud 9 when I got the promotion. When someone is being very careful or cautious, we say, he's treading carefully. For instance, she's treading carefully with her words. Try this. I'm treading carefully around this topic. If you understand someone's feelings or situation very well, you can say, I can relate. For example, he's nervous about the test. I can relate. Practice saying, she's worried about her future. I can totally relate. To say something is very easy, we use the phrase, it's a piece of cake. For example, the exam was a piece of cake. Try saying, that recipe is a piece of cake to follow. When something is very confusing, we say, it's all Greek to me. For instance, I tried reading the instructions, but it's all Greek to me. Practice this. When he talked about finances, it was all Greek to me. If something doesn't make sense or seems unreasonable, you can say, it doesn't add up. For example, his story doesn't add up. Try this. The details in this report don't add up. To describe something happening very fast, we say, in the blink of an eye. For example, the car disappeared in the blink of an eye. Practice with this. The weekend was over in the blink of an eye. When someone is lucky or barely escapes trouble, we say, he dodged a bullet. For instance, she missed the meeting, but nothing important happened. She dodged a bullet. Try saying, I forgot to submit the form, but the deadline was extended. I dodged a bullet. If someone is pretending not to notice something, we say, he turned a blind eye. For example, the manager turned a blind eye to the mistake. Practice this. She turned a blind eye to the rules being broken. When someone is very proud of something, we say, he's beaming with pride. For example, the parents were beaming with pride at the graduation. Try saying, she was beaming with pride after the performance. If someone wants to be alone or distant, you might say, he's keeping his distance. For instance, he's been keeping his distance since the argument. Try this. I'm keeping my distance until things cool down. To describe something very risky or dangerous, we say, it's a slippery slope. For example, skipping classes is a slippery slope. Practice this. Lying once can be a slippery slope. If someone accepts a situation, especially a bad one, we say, he came to terms with it. For example, she came to terms with the breakup. Try saying, I've come to terms with the change. When someone is working hard or putting in effort, we say, she's going the extra mile. For example, he always goes the extra mile for his clients. Practice saying, they went the extra mile to make the event special. When you're doing something just to be polite or out of habit, we often say, he's just going through the motions. For example, she's not really into the job, she's just going through the motions. Try this sentence, he was at the party, but he was just going through the motions. If someone speaks without thinking, you might say, he spoke without a filter. That means the person didn't hold back or consider their words. For example, she tends to speak without a filter, especially when she's angry. Practice with this. I wish he wouldn't speak without a filter, it causes problems. When someone acts quickly without wasting time, we say, he got straight to the point. For example, in the meeting, she got straight to the point. Try using this one. I like when people get straight to the point instead of rambling. If a situation becomes much worse suddenly, we say, it spiraled out of control. For instance, the argument spiraled out of control. Practice with this. What started as a small disagreement spiraled out of control. When you hear something that surprises or shocks you, you can say, that took me aback. For example, his response really took me aback. Practice this. I was taken aback by her reaction. To describe someone very nervous or shy, especially around people, we say, he's like a deer in headlights. For instance, when asked to speak, she looked like a deer in headlights. Try this. He froze on stage, like a deer in headlights. If someone avoids saying something directly, we say, he beat around the bush. For example, stop beating around the bush and say what you mean. Practice with, she kept beating around the bush when I asked about the project. When you want someone to stay calm, you can say, keep your cool. For instance, despite the stress, he kept his cool. Try saying, even during the crisis, she managed to keep her cool. If someone quickly loses their calm, we say, she lost her temper. For example, he lost his temper during the discussion. Practice this. Try not to lose your temper when things go wrong. When something is exactly right or accurate, we say, he hit the nail on the head. For instance, her analysis hit the nail on the head. Try saying, you hit the nail on the head with that explanation. To say you're very tired, especially mentally, we say, I'm burned out. For example, he's been working non-stop and now he's burned out. Try this. After back-to-back meetings, I feel burned out. If something is very outdated, we say, it's behind the times. For example, that company is behind the times in terms of technology. Practice this. His views are a bit behind the times. To describe something that's likely to happen soon, you can say, it's in the cards. For instance, a promotion might be in the cards for her. Try using this. A move to another city could be in the cards. When something is very predictable, we say, it was written all over his face. For example, you could see his disappointment. It was written all over his face. Practice with this. Her excitement was written all over her face. If someone makes a situation worse, we say, he added fuel to the fire. For example, instead of calming things down, he added fuel to the fire. Try this. Don't bring that up now. You'll just add fuel to the fire. To describe someone who's very confident in a negative or arrogant way, we say, he's full of himself. For instance, after winning, he became full of himself. Practice this. She's talented, but she's a bit full of herself. When something seems perfect on the outside but isn't inside, we say, all that glitters is not gold. For example, he has a great job but he's not happy. All that glitters is not gold. Try this. Her lifestyle seems glamorous but all that glitters is not gold. If someone fails to see the bigger picture, we say, he can't see the forest for the trees. For instance, he's so focused on the details, he can't see the forest for the trees. Practice with, she's worried about one issue and can't see the forest for the trees. To describe something fake or exaggerated, we say, it's a dog and pony show. For example, that presentation was just a dog and pony show. Try this. The ceremony felt like a dog and pony show to impress investors. When something is not guaranteed or is temporary, we say, it's touch and go. For example, after the accident, his recovery was touch and go. Practice this. The deal is still touch and go. If someone completely fails or embarrasses themselves, we say, he fell flat on his face. For example, she tried to tell a joke but it fell flat on its face. Practice saying, I tried to impress the boss but I fell flat on my face. When someone is hiding their true intentions, we say, he has a hidden agenda. For instance, she's pretending to help but I think she has a hidden agenda. Try this. You can't trust him. There's always a hidden agenda. To describe a situation where the result is very close, we say, it's neck and neck. For example, the two runners were neck and neck. Try this. The election is neck and neck. When you want to show you've been very honest, you can say, to put all my cards on the table. For example, let me put all my cards on the table. I want this job. Practice with, he put all his cards on the table during the meeting. If something has ended completely, we say, it's done and dusted. For example, the project is done and dusted. Try this. Once the paperwork is signed, it's done and dusted. When you want to encourage someone to be strong, you can say, hang in there. For instance, I know it's tough but hang in there. Practice this. Hang in there, it will get better soon. If someone's behavior is confusing or surprising, we say, it's out of character. For example, she was rude, which is out of character for her. Try saying, that decision was out of character for him. When you admit you don't know something, you can say, I'm drawing a blank. For instance, I know I studied but I'm drawing a blank on this. Question. Practice with, I'm trying to remember her name but I'm drawing a blank. If someone is acting strange or unusual, we say, he's acting out of sorts. For example, he's quiet today, must be out of sorts. Try this. She's been acting out of sorts lately. To talk about starting something from the very beginning, we say, back to square one. For example, the plan failed so we're back to square one. Try this. If this doesn't work, we'll be back to square one. When someone is completely shocked, we say, it knocked my socks off. For example, the performance knocked my socks off. Practice with this. That movie really knocked my socks off. If someone is talking a lot but not saying anything useful, we say, he's all bark and no bite. For example, he threatened to report me but he's all bark and no bite. Practice this. Don't worry about his threats. He's all bark and no bite. When someone is very confused or not thinking clearly, we say, he's out to lunch. For instance, she didn't hear anything I said. She was totally out to lunch. Try this. I tried to ask him a question, but he was out to lunch. To describe someone who gets distracted easily or doesn't stay on topic, we say, he's all over the place. For example, her explanation was all over the place. Practice this. The meeting went nowhere. He was all over the place. When something is obvious or clear without saying it, we say, it goes without saying. For instance, it goes without saying that we need to be on time. Try this. It goes without saying that safety comes first. If someone is trying to avoid giving a straight answer, we can say, he's beating around the bush. For example, stop beating around the bush and tell me the truth. Practice saying, she was clearly nervous and kept beating around the bush. To say someone barely succeeded or survived, we say, by the skin of his teeth. For example, he passed the test by the skin of his teeth. Try this. I caught the train by the skin of my teeth. When something is very unlikely or rare, we use the phrase, when pigs fly. For instance, she'll admit she's wrong when pigs fly. Practice this. He'll clean his room when pigs fly. If you need to calm down after something upsetting, we say, take a deep breath. For example, before responding to the email, take a deep breath. Try saying, I was so stressed, I had to take a deep breath. When someone finally realizes something after a long time.